Oh, I usually do a live stream after I've said I'm going to do a live stream. And today I have
Oh,
one to give to y'all because just a moment I wanted to share with you because once upon a time, I was a young person. I know, right? Decades ago, I was working for Husqvarna selling chainsaws, and not just any chainsaws. They were premium chainsaws, weed trimmers, and lawnmowers. And at the time, I was the only woman on the sales force. And after a stay in the wonderful state of Iowa, I moved to Texas. Well, when I moved to Texas, I was just by myself, not married, obviously just so young, just a baby, but I wanted to buy a house because a lot of young single people would like to buy a house. Well, my dad, being a realtor, and of course I'd grown up around the business, I called my dad and I said, Daddy, I want to buy a house here in Texas. Now, remember, y'all, this is more than 25 years ago, as much as I hate to admit it, but that's the era before cell phones. Well, I had a bag phone, the one that was $9.99 a minute that you didn't use unless you were basically already dead. But we had pay phones. There was a very primitive email. I had gotten a hold of email in college. There was no social media. And if you were a realtor and you wanted to connect somebody in a different state, you had to have met them at some big national brand thing or through your professional designations. My daddy had met people through being a CRS for years. He knew people in the old Star Power Network, which was created by the late, great Howard Brenton. So my daddy knew a lot of people because at the time in the 90s, he was one of the top agents in the Charlotte and Cabarrus County areas. So, of course, I asked my daddy who should help me buy a house in Texas, and I wanted to live in Grapevine. Now, if you don't know the Dallas area, Grapevine is a small town right beside Dallas, kind of in between Dallas and Fort Worth. And if you've been to Grapevine, this is way prior to the Gaylord and the Grapevine Mills and all that stuff. Grapevine was still a small town in the 90s. Well, my daddy knew somebody in the Dallas market, and he knew not just somebody, he knew one of the top agents. And that agent shall remain completely nameless and unidentifiable because there's lots of really great long-term top producing agents in the Dallas market. And my daddy was so excited because he really looked up to this agent and thought of them as the best in the business, super professional and great. So he called this agent and said, Hey, my baby girl wants to buy a house. Will you help her? So he gave my name and my home phone number to this agent. And then I called the agent after they called me back and asked me about my price range. And of course, remember, this was me being brand new, being in my 20s, didn't know anything about real estate. This agent did not try to set up a consultation, did not try to give me any information, just asked me what my price range would be. And I can do math. I know it's surprising for a realtor to do math. I can do math, and it's not even just percentages. So I had calculated roughly the amortization schedule, and I had my own number in mind, and I gave it to this agent, and he said to me, well, that's not big enough for me to help. And I was flabbergasted because I thought that my daddy would have called somebody who wanted to help a young single female buyer. And I was not good enough, big enough, and enough money for this agent to dare stoop to help me. So, of course, being kind of hard-headed, which I always have been, I was riding around Grapevine looking for a house, and I found a lovely brick ranch. It had a yard sign in front of it, and I had looked up on the flyer, because we had flyers in boxes back then, that it was within that price range that I knew my salary would support. So I called the agent on the sign, and she must have been 853 years old, smoking 3 packs a day, because she talked like this. Hello. She had the frog lady voice. And she popped right over to that house and immediately swooped into real estate mode because, as it turns out, she was very interested in helping. Well, I bring up the story because I just got an email from that original agent who is obviously prospecting me as a referral partner over here in North Carolina all these years later. I guarantee this agent does not know who I am, does not remember this moment, because in his world, I was a cold lead and he didn't want to work with me. But y'all, that has stuck with me the whole time I have been in real estate, because when my dad found out, by the way, he was heartbroken that anybody he had looked up to would have looked down on me, or frankly, anybody that he would have sent them. Because my dad built his business forever, regardless of price point, regardless of area. And he told me on the first day I got into real estate after I left the chainsaw world and came back to North Carolina, my daddy told me that every time the phone rang, I should remember what an honor it was to be called, because they could have called anybody, and that the money is not the most important thing. You have to always be looking out for the best interest of the other person. And as he said, if you do people the right way, the money will find you. And I know that those of y'all that are my followers in real estate, I know that you have probably built your business in the same way. And it can be hard to think about your business that way when your business is having a rough time because of the low levels of inventory or the changes in interest rates, just the general sense of unrest. But you have to have guiding principles that never leave you. And my dad gave those to me all along. And of course, I'm not going to unsubscribe from this agent's newsletter, because just seeing him come across my feed puts a fire back in my belly to keep doing good things. And I think about the state of organized real estate right now. And there's a lot of agents out there that are very unhappy with how they're being talked about in the mainstream media, how they're being talked about in the press. And they just feel that they are not big enough to matter when the powers that be are just straight up attacking the entire profession without cause. And I just got to tell you that you are a member of a giant trade organization, and you do matter, or else we wouldn't have seen a press release like we did yesterday with the number of agents that are down this year in membership. And of course, we know it's very cyclical, goes along with the economy in great part. But for many agents and many realtors, they just don't feel like they matter, that their voice is not important. And that's just not a good place to be. Just as you don't want a buyer or a seller to call you and be made to feel small, you shouldn't be made to feel small by your trade association either. So how do you fight back on those moments? Well, you fight back maybe by doing what I did in Texas and finding a different pathway. And when you're in real estate, for some of y'all, the different pathway is going to be to find other places to volunteer. And for some of y'all, it's going to be to volunteer for the first time. I don't know what your talents are. All I can say is that each person who pursues professional real estate, I believe, has a very important voice, because when you look just at the top leadership of our organization, that's not every zip code. That's not every price point. That's not every demographic group. That's not every kind of real estate property that we deal with in the country. So you have to figure out what you're going to do on your end to take care of the community where you live. Now, for those of y'all that have issues and questions about how to present this information, how to be that voice, I am doing a webinar in an hour about how to explain your value as an agent who works for buyers. And it is repeating on, and they're all live, by the way, so I can answer your questions. January 17th, February 7th, and March 14th. They're all at 1 o'clock Eastern time. And the link is in my bio on any of these, or you can just go to leibrownuniversity.com if you want to log in and get some strength on how to explain these things. But in addition to that, I've got to let y'all know that it's one of the reasons that I am making another effort to run for public office, because I just don't feel confident that the people have the voice they should have. Everything in our political environment is supposed to run on the consent of the governed, and I just don't see that happening right now, because I'm surrounded by reasonable people who don't feel like they have representation. And they feel like they've been made to be small, and they don't feel like their votes even matter anymore, and for myriad reasons. But I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, good job on running for office, but I just don't vote anymore because I don't think my voice matters. And I got to tell you that as I'm looking at this race and the primary on March 5th, I know exactly how many votes I need to cross that 30% threshold to avoid a runoff. And it can absolutely come down to a handful of my neighbors and my former clients right here in this district where I live, where I grew up, and where I own my business. And by the way, if you are looking at the North Carolina congressional districts and you're not sure where you fall because the maps have moved, I'm going to stick that link here in the comments for you to look for your district. But you also got to pay attention because a lot of our candidates don't even live in this district or even close to it. One of the candidates has a 45-minute drive to get to the district, but that candidate was looking for a place to run. I believe that the congressional representation should speak for the area and the constituents that that person serves. Now, of course, when I ran in 2019, I was 4 minutes outside the district, but I felt I had a case because I'd sold so many houses and had so much family in the district. But now that the lines have changed, it's actually where I physically live. And I see the value now because Lord knows it was explained to me about 1,000 times in 2019. So anyway, if you've ever felt like you didn't have a voice, you should know that there's a way to express your voice. And it's not just by voting, it's by helping candidates that you believe in get elected. And I will tell you that I've learned for so many years, I enjoy hosting events for candidates. I enjoy going to polls. I enjoy knocking on doors and making phone calls. And whatever it is that you're willing to do to say, this is my country, this is my state, this is my district, this is my industry, this is my business, you're going to have to at some point decide that you're willing to do something besides get on social media. Although I'm glad y'all are watching this because I keep getting shadow banned by the social networks because I do have a very firm set of principles and beliefs. But if you have always wondered if your voice matters, look at the town of Mount Pleasant in Cabarrus County where the mayoral race was decided by one vote. Look at the town of Orem in eastern North Carolina off 74 where the race was decided by 2 votes. I'm telling y'all, this is going to be a wild election year, and this is your time to get educated, and this is your time to do something. So if you're tired of not being heard, or if you've ever felt small or had somebody else make you feel small, or the circumstances just felt like they were bigger than you are invited to come work with me. And you can help me in any way that you can. You can go to LeighBrownForCongress.com anytime and get signed up to help. But especially if you live right here in the district and you want to come help me, I would be so excited to have your help. And I will tell you that it's a lot of fun, especially for young people. If you have a teenager or some young person in your house that's building a resume, they can come intern on the campaign and help put out some yard signs or help go walk in some neighborhoods, of course, with plenty of adults to make sure that they can learn how the process is always supposed to work. I was actually at an event on Tuesday evening, and one of the individuals I met in the room, I met a couple, and they said their frustration with their former representative was that they felt like they were only listened to in an election year, and they were hoping to find a candidate that's actually going to be visible and not forget where they came from. Well, I can tell y'all right now, I will never forget where I've come from. My family won't allow it, but I just won't do it. And I know that an effective representative is very much like an effective real estate agent. I am more successful in real estate when I am visible in my community. And I believe our elected officials should be less attached to DC and more attached to their constituents and being that voice. So I'm very excited for this opportunity, and I hope that I'll have a lot of help. I do see a question from my friend Kirk that says, how do you balance views and support against your real estate business? Well, here's the thing, Kirk. I believe we should all be allowed to have our own views. I have decided to be uncancelable myself, no matter what people throw at me and say at me, because I've discovered most of it is fabrications, half-truths, and straight-out lies. So I just have to know what I believe and be willing to be kind about what I believe. You're not going to find me throwing flames and bombs. I'm just not that person, but I do get very spicy and fiery because I believe what I believe, and I'm always open to people teaching me things and giving me more information than I had prior. I love doing the research because I am not somebody who is set in stone. In fact, it's a very close mirror to my real estate business. If I did business exactly the way today that I did 24 years ago, I would be doing my clients a disservice because technology has moved and just the mobility of people has changed. We don't stay in our houses in the same time frames that we used to. People buy and sell real estate at different intervals. They're buying houses for different reasons. We didn't have broadband 24 years ago, and now that's an important factor for people buying a house. politics should be the same way. We should always be looking at how do we become more responsive, and are we understanding consumer behavior? And I just believe there has to be a better way. I'm always an optimist. In fact, one of my favorite quotes is Winston Churchill, who said, "Of course I am an optimist. What use is there in being anything else?" So I have to believe that the country can be put back on the right course, that regulations can be downsized, and that we can find a place of reasonable behavior as a society together again. I have to believe that. I just am not a quitter or a giver upper. And I can also tell you this: if somebody disagrees with me politically and thus chooses not to use my real estate business, well, that's their choice, right? I'm not going to tell them they have to use me by any stretch of the imagination, because I'm definitely a free market person. And in fact, Kirk, it's one of the coolest things about real estate is that because there are so many of us and we are all over the place, the consumer has a ton of choices. And that's a really good thing, because if somebody wants to come to fisticuffs with me because they disagree with me on a political issue, we're probably just not a good fit to sit down and have a glass of wine together either, because I don't drink wine. But besides that, there has to be a place where we can disagree and still move along together. And that's just not the case for everybody right now. However, I do know this: in real estate, I've worked with plenty of people who disagree with me on things, and we've worked together beautifully because we can make a decision to focus on what matters. I am very good at focusing, and I'm very sure that I can bring that talent to Washington, D.C., not just on behalf of people in North Carolina, but frankly, anybody that's in small business and in an entrepreneurial space, especially like real estate. And frankly, if you're a real estate person and you've been frustrated about what's happening with regulatory affairs and with the attack on home appliances is driving me crazy. I'll talk more about that later today, but you start realizing that you're going to have somebody in the arena to represent what matters to you. And currently, there's a lot of people in DC that are glad to take real estate money, but I don't see any that are practitioners. And so I plan to go be the voice of real estate, property rights, the American dream in DC, because it transcends so much in our societies. And frankly, it's the best opportunity our kids have at a future that they can put their azaleas in the ground and plant some tomatoes and build a different future. All of that hinges on how we work together. And in fact, when you think about what politics is, a lot of people say, I don't do politics, I hate it. Well, you can't, because politics is really how we all get along together in public society. That's what the original root of the word is. And so when you start to understand that, you realize maybe because politics is broken, society is broken, or is it because society is broken that politics is broken? But I'm never going to be the one who says everything is at a loss. I'm the person who believes we can bring things back together, because I'm in real estate and I am a cheerful optimist, and I know that I can help somebody buy if I just figure out the way, and I can help them sell if we can figure out the way. And exactly, we miss Johnny Isaacson. He was the last of the old breed who understood real estate from the practitioners and grassroots standpoint. God rest his soul. He did a lot of great work for real estate. So I do hope to be that person. And if you want to support me, you can help me from anywhere. But if you're local, I really want your help on one of these weekends to go out and say hello to your neighbors and be a friendly, cheerful voice of reason. I don't want anybody signing up to help me that's going to be ugly, just be honest with you. And if you believe we need to have another realtor advocate like Johnny Isaacson was, our senator, well, not our senator, but the senator from Georgia, he wasn't from North Carolina, then that's yours is your opportunity. And for all the people who like to throw stones at me, I don't see them running for office. And so it's a matter of you got to figure out what your best opportunity is for your best opportunity. And I'm going to look at my real estate business always with a keen eye and say, how do I get better? Because I've not always returned calls as fast as I should have. I'm always trying to get better, though. And I look at the trade association that we're a part of, the National Association. I threw in everything I had to try to make the organization more responsive and more focused on real estate issues. And I hit a dead end wall because the organization has different focus right now than just real estate issues. So therefore, I am going to focus on what I can do for real estate, for you, the realtors, for you, the consumer, through advocacy. Dave, the district is half of Cabarrus County. So it's basically Concord, out towards Harrisburg, Mount Pleasant, and Midland. The other side of Concord, of around Poplarton and Kannapolis, is now in the 6th district, so our county is split. It's also a slice of Mecklenburg County where you have Matthews and Mint Hill, a little bit down around South Charlotte. There's a really little interesting line drawn down there because it's very dense population-wise. Union County, Stanley County, Montgomery County, Anson County, Richmond County, Scotland County, and part of Robeson County. So Lumberton actually splits as well, and the other side of Lumberton would be in the district with David Rouser. So that's where the district sits. It is very heavily along 74, but what's interesting to me about this district is it's very similar to real estate. You've got big city areas, which would be right there at the edge of Charlotte. You've got a growing neighboring city, which would be Concord, because we are not a suburb of Charlotte and don't intend to be, thank you. You've got a county that is a mix of some suburban areas, some small towns, and then straight up ag rural, and that's going to be Union County. Stanley County, you've got the Uwharrie National Forest. You've got one of the coolest community colleges we have in North Carolina, in Troy, where they do gunsmithing. And yes, that's a great future for your kids if they don't want to do a traditional four-year college. You've also got in Anson County, which is known as the Mother County. If y'all didn't know that, there's more than places to stop along the way to the beach, by the way. Do not ever think there's less to this district than there is. You've got a lot of small farms growing up in Wadesboro, some minority-owned farms. It's really a cool little environment they're building in Anson County. And then you're going to see, by the way, a new casino there. If the legislature passes a casino this year, that won't hit Anson County. It'll hit right there at the edge of Union near Peachland and Popeton. And then you go out Scotland County, we have St. Andrews College, which is growing again after being devastated by hurricanes. Laurinburg itself is a really cool small town, and you have to get off of the fast food off 74 to see all the cool factor. And they do some really great festivals there. And you've also got in Richmond County, that's where Rockingham is located, where you have the old Speedway. And you have another really great revitalized in downtown. Plus, you've got a new industrial district coming up. Look, I can talk about this all day. In Stanley County, I mentioned you have the Uwharrie National Forest, but you also have Albemarle. And one of the last drive-ins, by the way, left in the area at the Baden Road Drive-In. And if you're a runner like me, that's one of the best road races you'll ever run, is the Fellowship of the Idiot. If you want to run that with me, you should totally come join me. And then we have Robeson County, where you have the home of the Lumbee Indian, who have never been federally recognized, but are a very historic tribe right there in that area. And Robeson County has grown tremendously. Again, you've got a lot of farms there. You've got UNC Pembroke. So that's the district, is a very big, broad mix. And in real estate, we serve urban, suburban, exurban, rural. We serve residential, commercial, land, investors. All of that is in this district. And I think that's one of my unique skills to bring to the public, is somebody who understands the different areas and not just one little pocket. So anyway, long answer to your question, Dave, but you're a local realtor and you understand exactly what's happening because you've been working in the Charlotte market forever as well. So anyway, here's my homework assignment for you. Be the kind of person, when you get the phone call, that is glad the phone call came. Be glad somebody called you. Be glad to be available. Be glad to be a resource, and be glad that you belong to an organization that's big enough to have room for your voice. But the homework is to raise that voice in some way, somehow, because 2024 is going to be a wild ride for everybody, not just in real estate. And it's going to take a lot of people to make things better. And if you're like me, then we're just going to have to make it better together. Now, some of y'all, I'll see at 1 o'clock on the live stream for how to articulate your value as a buyer agent. And for the rest of y'all, if you would like to sign up for a future class, again, the 17th of January, February 7th, and March 14th at LeeBrownUniversity.com. Thank you for listening to my little story here on a Thursday afternoon. I'll see you later.